Chloe Charles was 41 when her life suddenly became a countdown. On the first Tuesday of March, she sat across from Dr. Olive in a quiet hospital in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The doctor folded her hands. "Chloe, the pancreatic cancer has spread to your liver. Surgery cannot remove it." Chloe stared at her. "How long?" Dr. Olive answered carefully. "With treatment, perhaps 6 to 9 months. Without treatment, less." Chloe opened the small notebook she normally used for farm expenses. "Tell me everything. Don't protect me from the truth." 40 minutes later, she sat alone in her truck practicing what she would tell her husband Matthew. "I have cancer. It's serious. We need to talk about what happens next." She repeated those words until she could say them without crying. Chloe believed telling Matthew would be the hardest conversation of her life. She was wrong.
That evening, Chloe returned unexpectedly to Charles' Orchard and noticed Matthew's truck beside the cider house. The building was dark, but she heard his voice inside. Chloe approached quietly and stopped when she heard him laughing into his phone. "Relax," Matthew said. "She won't be around forever." Chloe froze. The medical report, giving her months to live, was still folded inside her coat pocket. Matthew continued speaking to a woman about paperwork and a business agreement. When Chloe's boots scraped the gravel, he quickly ended the call. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. Chloe stared at him. "Who was that?" Matthew smiled. "Parts department. The tractor clutch is delayed." Chloe knew the parts counter had already closed. "What's for dinner?" he asked, kissing her cheek. Chloe swallowed everything she had planned to tell him. Pot roast. That night, she decided Matthew would not learn she was dying. Not yet.
Charles' orchard covered 140 acres outside Grand Rapids, and Chloe had spent most of her adult life protecting it. Her first husband, Dawson, had planted many of its apple trees with his own hands. They had been married 14 years and raised 2 children in the farmhouse, Rose, now 21, and Kenneth, 17. 8 years earlier, Dawson suffered a fatal heart attack between the Honeycrisp rows. Chloe had kissed him before breakfast. By lunchtime, she was a widow. Neighbors encouraged her to sell. "You shouldn't carry this alone," one farmer told her. Chloe looked towards Dawson's tray. "I am not selling my children's future." She learned every part of the business, from accounts and contracts to machinery and harvest schedules. Rose helped with paperwork whenever she came home, while Kenneth could repair almost anything mechanical. The orchard was not simply land, it was Dawson's legacy, and Chloe intended to protect it.
A year after Dawson died, Chloe met Matthew at an equipment auction. After deliberately stopping his bid on a sprayer she wanted, he approached her outside. "I figured you needed it more," he said. Chloe laughed. "You also made me spend $800 extra." Matthew grinned. "Then I owe you coffee." 2 years later, they married. Before the wedding, Chloe's lawyer, Helen Trump, demanded a prenuptial agreement. "The orchard, cider house, equipment, and family trust remain yours," Helen explained. "If the marriage ends, Matthew receives $60,000 and his personal property." Matthew signed without arguing. "I'm marrying Chloe, not her apple trees," he joked. For years, he seemed devoted. Gradually, Chloe trusted him with more responsibility: a farm account card, business authorization, and eventually financial and medical powers of attorney. She believed she was building a stronger marriage. She never imagined those documents could become weapons against her.
Chloe Charles was 41 when her life suddenly became a countdown. On the first Tuesday of March, she sat across from Dr. Olive in a quiet hospital in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The doctor folded her hands. "Chloe, the pancreatic cancer has spread to your liver. Surgery cannot remove it." Chloe stared at her. "How long?" Dr. Olive answered carefully. "With treatment, perhaps 6 to 9 months. Without treatment, less." Chloe opened the small notebook she normally used for farm expenses. "Tell me everything. Don't protect me from the truth." 40 minutes later, she sat alone in her truck practicing what she would tell her husband. Matthew, I have cancer. It's serious. We need to talk about what happens next. She repeated those words until she could say them without crying. Chloe believed telling Matthew would be the hardest conversation of her life. She was wrong. That evening, Chloe returned unexpectedly to Charles' orchard and noticed Matthew's truck beside the cider house. The building was dark, but she heard his voice inside. Chloe approached quietly and stopped when she heard him laughing into his phone. Relax, Matthew said. She won't be around forever. Chloe froze. The medical report giving her months to live was still folded inside her coat pocket. Matthew continued speaking to a woman about paperwork and a business agreement. When Chloe's boots scraped the gravel, he quickly ended the call. Hey, sweetheart, he said. Chloe stared at him. Who was that? Matthew smiled. Parts department. The tractor clutch is delayed. Chloe knew the parts counter had already closed. What's for dinner? He asked, kissing her cheek. Chloe swallowed everything she had planned to tell him. Pot roast. That night, she decided Matthew would not learn she was dying, not yet.
Chloe photographed every message before returning the secret phone exactly where she found it. That night she sat alone inside the cider house, thinking, Matthew's affair hot, but his plan frightened her more. Diana wanted the cider house and 30 acres of valuable roadside land under a 21-year lease. Matthew had repeatedly pressured Chloe to accept it. Then, around 3 in the morning, Chloe remembered something far more dangerous. 3 years earlier, she had given Matthew financial and medical powers of attorney. If cancer eventually left her unable to make decisions, Matthew could potentially use the authority she had trusted him with. Chloe stood abruptly. Not why I can still stop you. By sunrise, she had made 2 decisions. Matthew will remain unaware of her diagnosis, and every important legal document will be revealed immediately. At 7 o'clock, she called Ellen Trump. Ellen, I need an urgent meeting. Ellen asked, is Matthew involved? Chloe answered, more than I ever imagined. On Monday morning, Chloe placed photographs of Matthew's message across Ellen's desk. Ellen read them silently before removing her glasses. His comment about your paperwork concerned me more than the affair. Chloe nodded. That's why I'm here. Ellen immediately reviewed the existing powers of Anthony. We revoke this first, she said. Who replaces Matthew? Rose. Ellen then examined the family trust and prenuptial agreement. The orchard remained protected as Chloe's separate property, but another problem appeared. If you died while married, Ellen explained, Matthew can remain in the farmhouse for a year. He is also currently the beneficiary of a $150,000 life insurance policy. Chloe stared at her. So, he received more if I die than if we divorce. Under the correct document, yes. Chloe almost laughed at the correct timing. Ellen leaned forward. What exactly do you want? Chloe answered firmly. Remove his authority. Protect my children. Change the beneficiaries and strengthen the trust and prepare my divorce.
While Helen worked on the legal documents, Chloe secretly began chemotherapy. Dr. Olive arranged for a port beneath her collarbone, and every Tuesday Chloe sat in a hospital chair while powerful medicine entered her body. She told Matthew she was attending a weekly community group in the city. Have fun, he said without looking away from his phone. His indifference hurt, but also made hiding the treatments easier. After the second session, Chloe became violently sick behind the equipment shed just as Matthew unexpectedly returned home. She wiped her mouth before he approached. What happened? He asked. Chloe pointed toward an old tractor. Diesel fumes. They turned my stomach. Matthew frowned at the machine. We should replace that thing. Then he walked away without another question. Chloe watched him disappear into the barn. She had expected hiding terminal cancer from her husband to be impossible. Instead, she was discovering something painful. Matthew had stopped paying close attention long before she became sick. By late April, Helen had revoked Matthew's powers of attorney and prepared new documents naming Rose instead. Chloe invited Rose home one Sunday and placed the papers before her. I need your signature. Rose read them carefully. You're making me your financial and medical agent? Yes. Rose looked suspicious. Why now? Chloe forced herself to remain calm. Because this farm needs a plan. Rose leaned closer. Mom, is something wrong? Chloe avoided the question. I trust you. That's what matters. Rose reluctantly signed. The next morning, Chloe visited the bank and removed Matthew's card from the orchard account. Before she left, the manager stopped her. Mrs. Charles, you should know Matthew recently asked about borrowing money against orchard property. We refused because only the trustee could authorize it. Chloe's blood ran cold. Matthew had been trying to use her land before she overheard his call. Driving home, she whispered, You started this first, Matthew. I'm simply finishing it.
Kenneth turned 18 at the end of April, and Chloe filled the farmhouse with food, cake, neighbors, and laughter. One evening, she wanted her son to have a normal birthday. Matthew became the perfect stepfather, joking with Kenneth's friend and dancing with Rose in the kitchen. Later, after everyone left, he poured himself whiskey and became unusually serious. My father was sick for 9 years, he said. My mother spent those years caring for him until she became a shadow of herself. Chloe quietly asked, Wouldn't you care for someone you loved? Matthew stared into his glass. I don't think I could watch someone die slowly. Chloe felt those words deeply. Her husband was terrified of sickness and responsibility. It explained why he might run from suffering, but it did not excuse his betrayal. She watched the birthday plate and thought, if I had told you in March, would you already have left me?
In May, Chloe found the proposed orchard lease inside Matthew's truck. She read it carefully. Diana Cole's company wanted the cider house and 30 roadside acres for 20 years. Chloe's name was already typed beneath the signature line. Behind the contract was an email from Diana. If Chloe keeps refusing, is there another way? You said you handle her paperwork. Matthew had replied, I have options. Another message revealed that Matthew would receive a management position and a large payment once the agreement succeeded. That evening, he pushed the lease across the dinner table again. Diana's board needs an answer. Chloe calmly replied, Then tell them no. Matthew frowned. You're being sentimental. Chloe looked directly at him. And you're becoming too interested in land that isn't yours. His expression hardened for a second before his smile returned. That brief look told Chloe everything. Matthew was no longer merely asking. He was waiting for an opportunity. A few days later, Chloe entered the cider house, carrying Dawson's old carpenter's pencil. Above the press stood a wooden beam covered with decades of harvest dates and faded notes. Dawson's handwriting was still there. Chloe touched it gently before finding an empty space and writing, Last best harvest, October. October would be her finish line. At Sunday dinner, she announced, This year's harvest festival will be the biggest we've ever held. Kenneth smiled. Both presses running. All day. Rose added, Live music. Chloe nodded. Find someone good. Matthew lifted his drink. What are we celebrating? Chloe smiled. Do we need a reason? He raised his glass. Then here's to one for the ages. Chloe touched her glass against his. One for the ages. Everyone smiled except Chloe. To them, October meant another family festival. To her, it meant every legal document had to be finished while she could still sign her name. June brought Chloe a small victory. Dr. Olive studied her latest scans and said, "The tumors have shrunk. The chemotherapy is slowing them down." Chloe exhaled. "How much time does that buy?" "Months, perhaps, but I still can't promise years." Chloe nodded. "Months are enough." Unfortunately, treatment was damaging the feeling in her fingers. Holding cold objects hurt, buttons became difficult, and one morning she dropped her pen while signing farm checks. Chloe immediately called Helen. "Finish the trust documents." "I'm working on them," Helen replied. "Work faster. My hands are changing." Helen heard the fear in Chloe's voice, but asked no questions. The revised trust named Rose as co-trustee immediately, giving her authority beside Chloe. Eventually, the orchard would belong equally to Rose and Kenneth. Helen's firm would provide legal oversight, while Matthew would receive only what the prenuptial agreement required. Chloe was finally putting the orchard beyond his reach.
The signing happened on Friday. Ellen had arranged two witnesses, a notary and a video recording showing Chloe understood every document. Before signing, Chloe had practiced her handwriting because chemotherapy had made her fingers numb. Ellen asked, "Are you signing freely?" Chloe looked towards the camera completely. She signed the trust changes, new powers of attorney, and beneficiary documents. Matthew $150,000 life insurance benefit was redirected towards Rose's and Kenneth's future. When Chloe finished, Ellen placed another folder before her. The label read, "Charles versus Matthew." "The divorce petition," Ellen said. "Once we file, he will know you are moving against him. He may challenge the prenup and delay everything." Chloe stared at the papers. How long could he delay it? Months? Possibly longer. Chloe's stomach tightened. Matthew believed time was something they both possessed. He had no idea it was one thing Chloe was running out of. She took the petition home. 3 days later, Matthew unknowingly gave her the final reason to sign it. Matthew made the decision easy. Throughout June, he kept pushing Diana's lace across the dinner table. One evening, Chloe finally said, "The cider house will never be released while I control this orchard." For a moment, Matthew's friendly expression disappeared. "You are letting memories destroy a good business opportunity." Chloe lowered her fork. "Those memories belong to me." The next day, Kenneth casually mentioned something while helping her repair a mower. Matthew bought a condo in Grand Rapids. Chloe stopped working. "What condo?" Kenneth shrugged. "He called it an investment. He said not to bother you because you already had enough problems." Chloe understood immediately. Matthew was already spending money he expected from Diana's deal: a new truck, a condo deposit, and promises built on Chloe's properties. The following Monday, she drove straight to Ellen's office. "File the divorce petition," she said. "I'm finished waiting."
Before Matthew was served, Chloe decided Rose and Kenneth deserved part of the truth. She invited them to Rose's apartment while Matthew was away. Chloe placed photographs of his secret messages, hotel bookings, and Diana's emails on the table. Rose's face hardened. "He was cheating on you and trying to take the orchard?" Chloe nodded. Kenneth remained silent, staring at the messages. Matthew had attended his games and taught him to fish. Why would he do this to us? Kenneth finally asked. Chloe touched his hand. "Because sometimes people can love parts of a family and still choose themselves when money appears." Rose stood angrily. "We should tell everyone." Chloe shook her head. "No, why protect him? I'm protecting us. We fight with documents, evidence, and patience, not gossip." Rose protested, but Chloe remained firm. What neither child knew was that their mother was also protecting the little time she had left. Matthew was served with the divorce papers that Friday while having lunch with Diana. He arrived home furious, carrying the envelope in one hand. "You had me served in public," he demanded. Chloe sat quietly repairing Dawson's old work jacket. The papers needed to reach you. Matthew paced across the kitchen. 5 years of marriage, and you couldn't speak to me first? Chloe put down her needle and retrieved a folder. Without saying anything, she placed photographs on the table one after another. Hotel bookings, romantic messages, the lease discussions, and Diana's email about Chloe's paperwork. Matthew's anger disappeared. Chloe, listen. It isn't what? Don't. Chloe interrupted softly. He stared at her. For once, the charming salesman had no speech prepared. Chloe gathered her sewing and stood. Helen will speak with your lawyer. She walked upstairs without another word. That night, Matthew paced below, while Chloe whispered into the darkness. You were right. I won't be around forever, but this orchard will.
Matthew refused to leave the farmhouse immediately. Instead, he moved into the downstairs den and began telling his version of the marriage around town. He never openly attacked Chloe. He was smarter than that. He simply appeared heartbroken at church and the local diner. He quietly told people, I gave that marriage everything. Chloe just shut me out. Soon, neighbors began treating him like the wounded husband. One woman stopped Chloe outside a grocery store. Whatever happened, think carefully. Matthew still has a lot of life ahead of him. Chloe almost laughed at the cruel choice of words. Rose was furious when she heard. Tell them what he did, she demanded. Chloe shook her head. No, they think you are the villain. Let them. Rose stared at her mother. How can you stand that? Chloe answered. Because being believed by strangers matters less than protecting what belongs to this family. But Matthew's next move made silence far more dangerous.
Matthew's lawyer announced that he intended to challenge the prenuptial agreement. He claimed Matthew had signed it under pressure before the wedding and had not fully understood its consequences. Helen called Chloe immediately. It's a weak argument, but weak arguments can still consume time. Chloe tightened her grip on the phone. How much? 8 months, maybe a year if they drag out discovery. Chloe closed her eyes. Matthew had accidentally found the perfect weapon. He believed delays would pressure Chloe into paying him more. He had no idea she might not survive long enough to see the case end. That Tuesday, chemotherapy left Chloe curled on the bathroom floor while Matthew watched television downstairs. She counted the tiles until she found enough strength to stand. Her phone suddenly rang. It was Rose. Mom, someone from the cancer center called looking for you. Why is a cancer center calling? Chloe went completely still. The secret she had protected since March was beginning to break. Chloe quickly steadied her voice. Rose, it's probably a scheduling mistake. Rose was silent. A cancer center doesn't accidentally call someone repeatedly, Mom. Chloe closed her eyes. I'll explain when I see you. 2 weeks later, she could hide nothing. Her eyes turned yellow, and a fever sent her to the hospital. Dr. Olive explained that the cancer had blocked a duct near her liver. Chloe needed a procedure and several days of observation. Rose arrived at the hospital and stopped at the doorway. She saw the chemotherapy port, medication, and oncology wristband. Mom, her voice broke. Chloe reached toward her. Come here. Rose approached slowly. How long have you known? Chloe could no longer lie. Since March. Rose covered her mouth. March. Chloe nodded. It's pancreatic cancer, sweetheart. It cannot be cured. Rose sat beside the bed and whispered, You've been dying while protecting everyone else. Kenneth arrived later and stood silently beside Chloe's hospital bed. Why didn't you tell us? He finally asked. Chloe took his hand. Because I needed you both living your lives while I fixed what Matthew was trying to damage. Rose shook her head through tears. You don't get to decide we can't carry this with you. Chloe looked at her daughter and realized Rose was right. I'm sorry. Kenneth squeezed her hand. Does Matthew know? No, Rose immediately said. Tell him. Tell Helen too. If the court knows you're terminal, maybe they'll stop his delays. Chloe shook her head. Matthew cannot know yet. Why? Kenneth asked. Chloe answered quietly. Because the moment he knows, he becomes the grieving husband. He'll use my illness to rewrite everything he has done. Rose protested. But the truth could help you. Chloe replied, then we'll find another way. My illness will not become his costume.
By August, Diana's business deal collapsed, with Rose now serving as co-trustee and divorce underway. Diana's company abandoned the proposed lease and chose another party. Soon afterward, Diana stopped contacting Matthew. One night, Chloe found him sitting alone at the kitchen table with a nearly empty whiskey glass. "She is gone," he said quietly. Chloe knew exactly who he meant but pretended otherwise. Matthew stared at the table. "I keep thinking about my father. Watching someone die changes you." Chloe's medication bottle was indeed inside her robe pocket. "What are you saying?" she asked. Matthew rubbed his face. "I'm saying I'm afraid of sick room. I know that makes me weak." For one moment she considered telling him everything. Instead she said, "Being afraid doesn't excuse hurting people." Matthew looked up, but Chloe walked away. That night, she understood something clearly. Matthew knew his weakness. He had simply chosen not to fight it. The settlement conference arrived before September ended. Matthew sat across from Chloe wearing the same confident expression he had carried into their marriage. His lawyer demanded compensation for Matthew's contribution to the orchard and threatened to continue challenging the prenup. Ellen leaned towards, "We can fight, but it may take months." Chloe knew she did not have much to waste. She asked for 5 minutes, then faced Matthew directly. "The prenup gives you $60,000. I will make it 95,000. You keep your truck. Each side pays its own legal fee." Matthew narrowed his eyes. "What do you want?" "You sign this week. You leave my house within 30 days and permanently waive every claim against the orchard, trust, estate, and insurance." His lawyer whispered urgently to him. Matthew ignored him. The condo payment was waiting, Diana was gone, and his business had collapsed. After several seconds, he said, "Deal." Chloe silently thought, "I'm not buying peace, I'm buying October."
Matthew reached for the settlement papers, then stopped. One condition. I attend the Harvest Festival. Chloe stared at him. "No, people will expect me there." 5 years, Chloe. I was part of this family. "You were part of it," she replied. "That doesn't give you permanent admission." Matthew looked embarrassed. Chloe offered something else. "I won't publicly explain why our marriage ended. No newspaper, no public accusations, no campaign against you. You keep your story. I keep my orchard." Matthew searched her face for a hidden trap. Finally, he signed. The divorce judgment was entered during the final week of September. Outside, Chloe removed her wedding ring and placed it inside an envelope. Helen asked, "Any regrets?" Chloe looked toward the autumn trees. "About protecting my children? None." 2 weeks before the festival, however, Dr. Olive delivered the news Chloe had feared. The cancer was growing again. "Treatment is no longer controlling it," she said. Chloe quietly answered, then stopped the chemotherapy. "I have 1 harvest left." Dr. Olive explained that continuing chemotherapy might steal more strength than it gave. Chloe listened quietly. "If I stop, how much time?" Dr. Olive hesitated. "Possibly weeks. I can't be certain." Chloe nodded. "Then I'm finished with treatment." "Are you sure?" "I've spent months preparing to live long enough to protect my children. Now I want enough strength to enjoy them." Hospice care was arranged to begin after the Harvest Festival. Back at the orchard, Chloe told Rose and Kenneth the treatment had ended. Kenneth looked away, fighting tears. Rose asked, "What do you want us to do?" Chloe smiled. "Help me throw one unforgettable festival." That evening, they sat together in the cider house making plans. Chloe looked at her children arguing over decorations and whispered, "This is exactly where I want to be." For the first time since March, she was no longer fighting for more time. She was deciding how to spend what remained. During the weeks before the festival, Chloe began preparing gifts that money could never replace. Every evening, she wrote letters for Rose and Kenneth to open on future birthdays. She prepared others for weddings, first children, difficult days, and moments when they might desperately want their mother's advice. Kenneth helped her record videos among the apple trees. In one, Chloe demonstrated how to recognize a ripe apple. In another, she explained how Dawson once lost his wedding ring in the hay. Dad really did that. Kenneth laughed behind the camera. Chloe smiled. Your father could repair a tractor, but couldn't keep track of jewelry. Rose joined them whenever she could. The hardest envelope was one Chloe prepared alone. Across the front, she wrote, "For the first harvest, I Mississippi." She placed it carefully inside a wooden box. Death could take her presence, but Chloe was determined it would not take her voice. The night before the festival, Chloe entered the cider house alone. She climbed a small ladder and found the words she had written months earlier on the old beam. Last best harvest, October. Her fingers were weak, but she traced the letters again with Dawson's carpenter's pencil until they were dark and clear. There, she whispered. The next morning arrived bright, cool, and golden. Families poured into Charles' orchard. Children filled baskets with apples, while both cider presses worked constantly. Kenneth directed parking like he had been running festivals for 20 years. Rose handled payments, vendors, and deliveries. Chloe wore a long coat and carried Dawson's old walking cane. Several neighbors noticed how thin she looked. "You've lost weight," one woman said. Chloe smiled. Busy season. She refused to let concern replace celebration. For months, October had been a deadline on her private calendar. Now that it had arrived, Chloe wanted to remember laughter, cider, and her children standing confidently where she once stood alone.
Late that afternoon, Chloe gathered Rose and Kenneth beside the cider tree. She removed an old brass key ring from her pocket. It held keys to the barn, cider house, fuel shed, farm truck, and storage buildings. "Your grandfather carried this," Chloe told Rose. "Then Dawson's carried them. After your father died, they became mine." Rose's eyes filled with tears. Chloe placed the key in her hands. "Now they are yours." Rose shook her head. "Mom, you can keep them." Chloe closed her daughter's finger around the ring. "I would rather see them in your hands than spend my last day imagining them there." Kenneth lowered his head. Chloe pulled him closer. "This belongs to both of you. Remember, something your father believed even before you could say it properly." Kenneth asked. "What?" Chloe looked towards the orchard. "You give the best to the people who tended the trees." Rose hugged her tightly. This time, Chloe did not pretend she was strong enough not to cry. Near sunset, a familiar truck stopped outside the orchard gate. Matthew stepped out alone. Conversation around the festival slowly became quieter. Chloe walked towards him using Dawson's cane. Matthew remained outside the gate. "Chloe," he said, "I made a terrible mistake." She said nothing. "Diana is gone. The deal is gone. None of that matters anymore." Chloe watched him carefully. Matthew continued. "5 years should mean more than my worst decision. Can we talk?" Inside Chloe's coat was the auspicious paperwork that would begin Monday. She could destroy his reputation with one sentence. "I have been dying since March." Everyone would understand what he had done while she quietly fought cancer. Chloe looked at the man who had betrayed her and remembered his fear of sickness. Finally, she said, "Go home, Matthew." He waited. "That's all." Chloe nodded. "That's all." Matthew slowly returned to his truck. Chloe had carried the truth like a weapon for months. At the gate, she chose not to fire it.
Hospice arrived that Monday. A hospital bed was placed beside the farmhouse window overlooking the orchard. For Chloe, the hardest part was no longer dying. It was allowing others to care for her. Rose managed her medicine in a notebook, while Kenneth brought her food and rubbed lotion into her aching hands. One evening, Chloe smiled at them. I spent my whole life thinking strength meant carrying everything myself. Rose adjusted her blanket. And now, Chloe looked toward the trees. Now I know letting people carry you is also strength. Kenneth began placing one fresh apple on her windowsill every morning. Your medicine, he would say. Chloe always laughed. Her body weakened quickly, but the house felt peaceful. Matthew was gone. The orchard was protected. Her children were beside her. For the first time since her diagnosis, Chloe had nothing left to defend. Chloe finished her final letters from that bed. One afternoon, she handed Rose the envelope marked for the first harvest in Mississippi next October. Chloe said, "Read this beneath the old apple tree after the pressing." Rose held it against her chest. "I don't want next October without you." Chloe smiled sadly. The orchard doesn't stop because the farmer leaves. Kenneth sat beside her. Neither will we. Chloe reached for both their hands. Promise me something. Don't spend your lives protecting my memory so fiercely that you forget to make your own. Rose nodded through tears. The first hard frost arrived on a Thursday morning. Chloe watched white crystals covering the orchard from her window. Your father loved mornings like this, she whispered. Kenneth asked, Are you afraid? Chloe thought for a moment. Yes, but trees let go every winter without believing spring is impossible. Then she closed her eyes and listened to the wind. Chloe died on December 3rd, shortly before sunrise, with Rose and Kenneth beside her. The funeral filled the church beyond its seats. Matthew quietly entered during the first hymn and sat in the last row. He wore a dark suit and the sorrowful expression many townspeople remembered from the divorce. Then the pastor began Chloe's remembrance. Chloe was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer in March, he announced. Matthew's face changed. The pastor explained that she had undergone treatment throughout spring and summer while protecting her children and preparing the orchard's future. People slowly began doing the arithmetic. March, the divorce, Matthew's public complaints, his attempts to delay the settlement, his demand for more money. Matthew stared toward the floor as the truth settled across the room. The neighbors who had comforted him months earlier now avoided his eyes. Chloe had never exposed him. She had simply lived long enough for the truth to eventually speak without her. After the funeral, nobody chased Matthew out of town or publicly attacked him. Something quieter happened. The sympathy disappeared. People remained polite at the diner and equipment cooperative, but conversations changed when he approached. Diana's company had already moved its business elsewhere, and Matthew's settlement money slowly disappeared into truck payments, rent, and old debts. Meanwhile, Charles' orchard remained exactly where Chloe had intended. Rose took over the books and management while Kenneth handled machinery and field work. One evening, Rose sat at Chloe's old desk and said, She planned all of this while we thought she was simply being stubborn. Kenneth smiled sadly. That sounds like Mom. On his 19th birthday, they opened the first letter Chloe had prepared. It contained one simple lesson. Being liked feels good, but being trusted lasts longer. Never trade the second for the first. Kenneth read it twice. She's still giving orders. Rose laughed through her tears. She always will.
The following October, the Harvest Festival returned. Both presses ran. Children filled the orchard and the smell of fresh cider covered the hillside. At sunset, Rose carried Chloe's sealed envelope beneath the old apple tree while Kenneth held a lantern beside her. Family and close friends gathered quietly. Rose opened the letter and began reading. My loves, if Rose is reading this, then the orchard did what orchards are supposed to do. It outlived the farmer. Rose stopped briefly as her voice broke. Then she continued. Don't stand beneath my tree being sad all evening. Taste the cider. Argue about whether it is better than last year. Laugh loudly. And remember what I told you when I handed over the keys. Kenneth lowered his head. Already knowing the next sentence, Rose smiled through the tears and read it aloud. You give the harvest to the ones who tended the tree. You tended meat too. The letter ended simply, Love, Chloe. That night, Kenneth placed a fresh apple on the window's sill where Chloe's hospice bed had once stood. Rose hung the brass farm keys beside their mother's desk. Above the cider press, Chloe's words remained visible on the wooden beam. Last best harvest October. Yet, Rose understood something her mother had discovered too late to explain fully. A legacy was not merely property left behind after death. It was what someone deliberately placed into trustworthy hands while they still had the strength to choose. Chloe had been given months to live, betrayed by the man she trusted, and forced to race against her own failing body. But she has reached the finish line first. Matthew had waited for Chloe to disappear so opportunity could soon become his. Instead, Chloe used her remaining time to make sure her children could never be pushed aside. The orchard survived, the truth survived, and so did the final lesson. The harvest belongs to those who stayed to tend the trees. Thank you for listening. Yeah, women who were overlooked, betrayed, or taken for granted share the moment they finally shows themselves. These are stories of family heartbreak, hidden truth, and the kind of justice that doesn't need to make noise to be powerful. If these stories like this speak to you, kindly share your thoughts in the comment section and subscribe to Abby Folk Tales for more.